Hey everybody, so you know what time it is. It's time for NHL Games of the Week, where I look at the upcoming week in the NHL, pick out which games I think will be the best and most exciting to watch this week. Just want to quickly remind everyone to please like and subscribe if you haven't already. It greatly helps out the channel and is much appreciated. So let's get into it here, starting with today, Sunday, December 8th, going through Saturday, December 14th. Today, I have none. There's a few games in the NHL today, but none of them particularly jump out to me as spectacular. So we'll move right on to Monday, December 9th, where we have the New York Islanders versus the Tampa Bay Lightning. This is a really intriguing matchup for me. The Islanders obviously had that really long point streak. I forget what it ended at. I think it was like 17 games. Islanders haven't been as good the last week or so. The last few games, they've kind of slowed down and cooled off a bit. Tampa Bay is a team that has largely been disappointing this season, but they haven't played as many games as other teams. So the Lightning are going to look to pull themselves up in the standings. This should be a very good matchup between two good teams and two teams that really need the points. The Islanders are in jeopardy of getting caught by Philadelphia, and Tampa Bay is currently out of the playoff picture and needs to pull itself back up into a playoff position. So, big game Monday night between the Islanders and Lightning, and that should be a really fun one to watch. Also, on Monday night are the Calgary Flames versus the Colorado Avalanche. Colorado beat Boston last night in Boston, handing the Bruins their first regulation loss on home ice. Colorado's proving that they are a great team. All the hype about the Avalanche heading into this season is 100% spot on correct. This team is really freaking good. They played Calgary in the playoffs last year in the first round and upset the one-seeded Flames. Calgary this year not having as good of a year. They've kind of struggled. They've been a little bit disappointing this season. This is a big game for Calgary. They want to get going. They want to get back to being that team that they were last year that won the Pacific Division. And they have to go up against one of the best teams in the conference and best teams in the league in doing that, who they also happened to play in the playoffs last year, which adds a little more spice to that matchup. And overall, I think Flames-Avalanche is going to be a great game on Monday night. Moving on now to Tuesday the 10th, we have Tampa Bay versus Florida. It's Tampa and Florida. That's an in-state rivalry. It's a division rivalry. It's two teams that are very close to each other in the standings. Florida currently in a playoff spot, Tampa Bay not. Obviously, I've talked about the Lightning already and how they need to move up the standings. That's going to be a great rivalry game. It should be a lot of fun to watch, and that's one of my favorite games of the week, honestly, is Tampa, Florida. Also Tuesday night are the San Jose Sharks versus the Nashville Predators. Two disappointing teams this season. Two teams that were supposed to be powerhouse, best team in the West contenders, who have gotten off to kind of slow starts. San Jose's obviously turned it around. They got off to a very bad start. Nashville, though, still near the bottom. Much further down in the Western Conference standings than I think anyone anticipated them to be. So this is a big game between two teams that are normally really good, but kind of struggling this season. I can't wait to see who wins this matchup, and I think San Jose-Nashville is going to be a really hotly contested game on Tuesday night. And finally, Calgary at Arizona, Pacific Division matchup, big points on the line. Arizona is right there with Edmonton at the top of the Pacific Division. Calgary, as we talked about, has not had a good season. They've been kind of disappointing. They're further down in the standings. It's a big game for the Calgary Flames in the division to try and pull themselves back up. And if Arizona can keep on winning like they have been, they have a shot to win this division this year. Moving on to Wednesday, December 11th, only 3 games that night, but one of them is a great matchup between Boston and Washington. I don't think I need to say much more than that. Every time the Capitals and Bruins play, it's an A-plus game. Their game earlier this year that I live streamed during, they played a Saturday night earlier this year. It was one of the best games I've seen all season. It was a whole lot of fun to watch. Plan on live streaming during this one as well. This should be a really good matchup between the Bruins and the Capitals, as it usually is when those teams play. Moving on now to the 12th, Boston, Thursday night, at Tampa Bay. So they play at Washington, and then they play at Tampa Bay the next night. Obviously, Bruins and Lightning, huge division rivalry there. They didn't meet in the playoffs last year because of Tampa Bay getting knocked out in the first round, but they did meet in the playoffs 2 years ago. It's usually, pretty heated when these two teams play. Tampa, as we've talked about, they're on this list a lot. They have a really, really big week this week for the Lightning. They need to get some wins, and especially divisional wins, and pull themselves back up into playoff position in the Eastern Conference. But yeah, I mean, Bruins Lightning is always, always, always a great matchup. Moving on now to Friday the 13th. Yes, we have a Friday the 13th this year. Or this month, I mean. I think there's been multiple this year. This month is another Friday the 13th. And there's only 2 games in the NHL that night, but one of them is Vegas versus Dallas. And though they're not in the same division, both of these teams are very, very close in points in the Western Conference. They're both fighting for playoff spots. Dallas is down in a wild card position, whereas Vegas has pulled into a top 3 spot. But again, the standings are very, very stacked right now. Everyone's right on top of each other. One win or one loss, and you can drop 3 or 4 spots in the standings. It's kind of crazy right now how close everyone is in both the East and the West, honestly. So this is a huge game between 2 very evenly matched teams in Vegas and Dallas, and I think it's going to be a really fun one to watch. Not necessarily that rivalry matchup that I'm always looking for. It might not be the most physical game, but I think it's going to be really fun, good hockey to watch. So that should be a great game. And then finally, we got a bunch of games on Saturday. Saturday's the 14th is a great, great day for the NHL. Starting with Dallas at Nashville. That is a divisional matchup. That will be a physical game. Those 2 teams met in the playoffs last year in the first round. Dallas coming out on top. Big-time points on the line. Teams that desperately need the points. And 2 teams that really don't like each other a whole lot at all. So Dallas-Nashville on Saturday night should be a great one, as should Washington at Tampa Bay. I know they're not in the same division, but anytime over the past couple years that the Lightning and Capitals have met, especially since their Eastern Conference final a couple years ago, it's been A-plus hockey every time they meet. Really even matchup between 2 very good teams, plus tons of physicality, a lot of dislike and animosity between the Lightning and the Capitals. We've seen a lot of, the fighters get into it, but we've also seen non-fighters get into it, and guys like Jakub Vrana dropping the gloves for the Capitals in games against Tampa Bay. It's heated when these 2 teams play, and I'm sure that this game's going to be no different. I mean, it's a Saturday night rumble in Tampa. It's going to be a fun one. Also that night, Boston versus Florida, divisional matchup. Florida is not really close to Boston in the standings, but they are only one spot back behind the Bruins in the Atlantic Division standings. The gap there is very, very big, but they're a team that needs points. They're a team that has teams like Tampa Bay nipping at their heels, trying to take their playoff spot. Buffalo, Montreal, Toronto there as well. This is a big game for the Florida Panthers, and then for Boston, I mean, we know that they're one of the best teams in the league, but they haven't been playing their best hockey as of recently. They've had a lot of come from behind wins where they've gotten down early and had to come back. They've also now, they lost in overtime to Chicago. They've lost in regulation to Colorado. So Boston's not playing at their absolute best right now. They obviously want to get back on track and start picking up some more wins. And finally, that night we have Chicago versus St. Louis. Obviously, that's a long-time rivalry in the NHL. A very, very good matchup, very heated matchup, no matter how good or bad the teams are. I mean, it's the Blues and Blackhawks. They've hated each other for decades now, and that should just be a really fun one. And then we know St. Louis is really good. Chicago, they're trying to get better, trying to pull themselves up in the standings, but just because of the long-time rivalry there, I'm definitely putting that as a game of the week. So those are our games of the week for this week in the NHL. It's a pretty good week overall. Decent number of really great games to watch. I will certainly be watching as many as I can. Hopefully you get the opportunity to watch some of these as well. And with that, like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. All those links are down in the description below. If you'd like to further support the channel, the links to our Patreon and merchandise store are down in the description as well. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.